morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on our beautiful planet. We have an interesting, I'm very excited about today's webinar. Okay, I better contain myself and get back, and I'll tell you why in a minute. First thing I want to do is what we always do. If I can find it again, it's just disappeared from my screen, is our agreements on how we can approach today and how we can get the best out of it and meet in the place where we all know within ourselves. And from there, we're taking care of our humanness by attending a webinar like this, by being in community and learning together, sharing together. So welcome to this ASI community gathering. And we're glad that you're here, that you made the time to come. These webinars are here to support all of us, our members, and mission of spiritual integrity. We ask you to stay connected, accountable, sensitive, and skillful when engaging today. We ask that you agree to create and maintain safe space for learning and growth. To that end, let's all refrain from marketing or self-aggrandizing. Let's avoid inflammatory or deliberately destructive comments. If you want to recommend a relevant and appropriate resource to the other people here, please do so in the chat box. If you have advice, feedback, or suggestions for another attendee, ask for their consent before offering it during your share. The ASI will remove participants who engage in harmful activity after one warning. Thank you so much for creating this community with us, showing up with presence, attunement, and self-awareness. Next, I'm going to introduce our speaker today. And then we're going to start doing something that we haven't done before, which is begin with a minute of silence, just to drop whatever brought you here and be here. Just be here with all of your beautiful self. Today we have Maryam Thea Elijah. I know her as Thea. She's a teacher in the Shadhuliyya Sufi order. She grew up in the household of Lex Hixon, a multiply ordained adept in a number of sacred traditions. And so from childhood, she has been immersed in earnest and honest interfaith conversations. She's also a Chinese medicine practitioner for 40 years, with a particular delight in modalities that are rooted in spirit and interfaith healing conversations between these medical modalities rooted in spirit. Maryam Thea Elijah is currently designing and preparing to teach the Right Use of Power for Spiritual Leaders program for the Right Use of Power Institute. And that's where I met Thea first. She was teaching, I think, Thea, you were teaching in the Right Use of Power Institute, and I was a student at the time, several years back. And so, as we come together, whatever brought you here, let's set it aside. Take a moment of silence together to bring ourselves fully into this gathering. We're dedicated to the spiritual life in whatever form and practice we have chosen, the one that makes sense to us. And let this brief pause invite you into the heart of your own path. Not Jack O'Keefe's, not Thea's, yours. Where's the heart of your own path? Let this moment of silence settle us into presence, openness, and a deep awareness of what is alive in us right now. Take a moment to ground ourselves, come here in body and spirit, and to speak from spiritual reality, not just about it. So this is why take a moment to go into the heart of your own path so that you can speak from it and not about it. Welcome, everybody. I will pop Thea's reduced size bio into the chat for anybody who's come in late. And Thea, welcome.
Thank you so much. I am at the moment feeling incredibly grateful for this new way of beginning gathering. I felt and feel you guys in the way that is most welcome to me. Thank you so much for this way of being here. I'm very delighted to be here. because I think that the conversations that ASI is hosting strike me as some of the most important ones of our time. And so I'm glad to be in this conversation with you today. And conversation it is, even though it's going to start off with what might seem like a wild cross-country jaunt. I have I have some prepared remarks. They are interruptible at any time. That's something inside, or anytime there's, I don't know, what I like to call divine mutiny. Something in your heart says, wait a moment, I have a question. Or wait a moment, that's gotta, whatever it might be. Please do let me have at least some sense of clear cognitive trajectory. But there may be punctuation moments for questions and comments, and you may recognize them before I do. And I also have empowered Jack to stop me anytime if it feels like, wait, this is a moment that should have more discussion before moving on. It's probably quite a few moments like that. Yeah.
And so we'd invite people to put their hands up if they want to interject at any time, and I'll be on the watch for that.
That sounds really great. Thank you for that. Yeah. We're here to talk today about unsolicited feedback from our students, though everything we discuss potentially applies to solicited feedback as well. And in fact, I thought before going on, perhaps it would be worth taking a moment to recognize and note how solicited feedback and the practice of soliciting feedback on a regular basis has a great deal of value as far as preparing the way for better outcomes in the face of unsolicited feedback. For one thing, often as spiritual leaders, we just plain don't receive much feedback at all, and not nearly as much as might be genuinely helpful. Thus, we may be out of practice at meeting, responding, and integrating feedback. Second, when there are no regular unpressured opportunities for the flow of feedback from students to their teachers, there can be a buildup of highly flammable contents under pressure, which may burst forth in the wake of some seemingly tiny, insignificant last straw. That's our topic, and that can really be something to manage internally and externally. However, all of this is relative to the practice of getting better at receiving ordinary feedback too. So I hope that if you have not already been looking into the question of how feedback is actively solicited in your community and ways to create regular, unpressured feedback opportunities, now would be a good time to start. And I'm going to try to screen share a few thoughts on that. Yeah, some brief thoughts on it. How do we solicit feedback in our communities? One, have we made public statements to the effect that we appreciate feedback, especially feedback that will help us grow? Two, do we use feedback forms, and do we include on those forms a chance to suggest what sorts of questions ought to be included on our feedback forms in the future? Three, is there anyone who is considered trustworthy and easily approachable in your community who could be your designated feedback person, a person to whom people can give feedback anonymously if they don't want to speak up directly? Four, are there people whom you can invite to give you challenging feedback in public so that others can see how you handle it in real time? That can be very exciting. I do recommend it. It may make all of your hair all over your body stand on end, but it's really good for community life. 5, are you able to receive feedback as a gift to your ongoing commitment to excellence, no matter how it's delivered. I'd like to look at both the inner and the outer aspects of meeting, responding to, and integrating feedback, especially unsolicited feedback. I will mention that my remarks are tremendously indebted to the work of Cedar Barstow and Amanda Aguilara of the Right Use of Power Institute. Much of the framework and vocabulary that I will be using is lifted from Right Use of Power Institute, RUPI, with additions by me to highlight issues particularly faced by spiritual leaders. So, feedback takes place in the context of a relationship. We are often considering the relationship when we decide how or when to give feedback, and part of that consideration is the power dynamic present in the relationship. In the case of spiritual leaders, it's a very high stakes relationship. It's what Dr. Peter Rutter, brilliant and insightful author of Sex in the Forbidden Zone, about how in relationships of trust, power dynamic relationships, how sexuality may be brokered, what Peter Rutter calls relationships of inestimable importance, relationships in which matters of ultimate value are transacted. Thus, the power imbalance in these relationships, our relationship with a spiritual leader, is arguably greater than any other relationship, than our relationship with a death squad. And maybe it's even greater than the power of life and death, the hopes and dreams that we bring to our relationship with our spiritual teachers. They're transcendent. That's a big power imbalance. So recognizing this power imbalance means taking responsibility for a level of impact that we may not wish to have, but that we do have anyway. The power to make someone very, very nervous. The power to devastate with a casual remark. The power to encourage or discourage someone's deepest potentials. All of this perhaps without even noticing. The first and perhaps most important aspect of meeting unsolicited feedback well is the responsibility that comes with this level of impact. There's a lot of research showing the effects of a power imbalance on neurology and endocrinology. For more about this, dig into Rupi's various books, courses, and other offerings. For now, I'm just going to mention that people in the up power position, like a spiritual leader, have more access to higher cortical functions. In other words, it's easier to stay rational, more rational than empathetic, at least on the surface. For the down power person, the state is more likely to be limbic, less calm, cool, and collected, and far more emotional right on the surface. This means that we, the ones in the position of power, need to take conscious steps to be proactively empathetic and to understand that the reason why the person speaking to us has to understand that the reason why the person speaking to us may seem very emotional is because they are feeling their down power position relative to us. The degree of emotion often present when in this kind of power dynamic does not mean that the person's concern or complaint is less valid. This is very important. It's important for us as we listen to be proactive about giving our listening and our respect to the substance of the communication, not to the potential degree of heightened emotional, even drama around it. I emphasize this because often in our surrounding culture, people who are showing emotion are often not as respected as those who are calm, cool, and collected. The substance of the communication from a person who is clearly emotional is often accorded a much less respectful attention than it deserves. Thus, power imbalances are perpetuated when we don't recognize and take into account the difference between a person's message and their manner. If we have time, this alone would be a great exercise to play with in breakout rooms, delivering the same critical feedback to each other, first with a great deal of emotion, and then second without emotion. It would be a wonderful opportunity to track the difference in our listening skills in each of the two instances, to practice how we need to resource within ourselves to give an equally respectful attention to the substance of the communication. Rupi recognizes 4 different kinds of feedback. We're not going to spend an equal amount of time on all of them, but I would like to take a look and give you the overview briefly. So, I want to draw attention to a few things briefly before deep diving into the last category and second to last. Appreciation versus evaluation, including praise, which is a positive evaluation. The crucial difference here that applies to power imbalance is that appreciation expresses gratitude for the impact of an experience on you. We describe our experience generally with I statements. Appreciation does not set up nor assume a power dynamic. Evaluation, even in the form of praise, does. It's an assessment, a rating, and it assumes that the giver has the authority to make that assessment. So evaluation can set up or accentuate a power dynamic. Even when we give praise, are we thereby claiming the role of judge or the right to evaluate? So I mention this only because it is a matter of hygiene, I would say, on our end, to determine, is this a moment when I am being asked to give an evaluation, or am I merely wishing to express appreciation? And it's a matter of hygiene because people in power may praise those down power from them in order to solidify their authority. Uh, giving a praise to give someone else the habit of looking up in order to get the praise or reality check how they're doing. So more to say about that, but not for this particular teaching. The difference between coaching and resolving is what is much more critical for us in this discussion right now. And critical may, in fact, no pun intended, be the most operative word. Coaching does not assume that there is a problem. Coaching assumes going from adequacy to even better, fulfillment of potential. It's important to be clear about this. When we're coaching, we're saying it's already acceptable, but we want to move from par on up from there. Resolving is a kind of feedback that identifies and attempts to resolve a difficulty, a problem, or a challenge in the relationship or situation where we are at subpar and we need to get to par. I am going over these different kinds of feedback because I would like to suggest that when we receive feedback, especially unsolicited feedback that is critical and even clearly of the resolving difficulties type, the most profound internal and external benefits take place when we receive the feedback as coaching, whether or not it was initially intended that way. I'm going to take a while to explicate this. So The first reason for this, the first reason for receiving the feedback as coaching, even if it is initially being lobbed at you as a resolving difficulties, this is subpar kind of critique, is that it shifts the power dynamic dramatically and gives the person with giving the feedback a more empowered status. When we're receiving it as coaching, we're really listening now, and we are listening for how we can grow and improve. People can feel that. They calm down. They no longer feel like they need to yell to be heard. If we have time, this is another exercise that it would be great to do together, to practice taking very critical input and reframing it as a gift to our ongoing commitment to excellence. I'll give one example just so we have the idea. Someone says, "You're overbearing. You take up so much space that nobody else can find their inner spaciousness when you're around." Obviously, this is a statement that identifies a subpar situation, a difficulty that does need to be resolved. But what if we were to reframe it as a gift to our ongoing commitment to excellence? It might come out sounding something like, "What I think I'm hearing from you is that my largeness is in some ways having the unintended effect of making it harder for others to find their largeness or spaciousness. I certainly don't want to have that effect on others. Could we look a little more closely at what I am doing that is having this effect?" Examples would be wonderful here. Then perhaps we can look together at how I can shift with authenticity, still being myself, still bringing what I am here to bring, but also supporting you and others to find your own spaciousness. And the most important part, am I hearing you correctly? What I often see at this moment is people's shoulders drop as they get it that I'm hearing what they are saying, but not as an attack. I could do this all day long. I love reframing critiques into gifts to our ongoing commitment to excellence. And I can say I'm rather experienced at it. And I'm now, by now, able to do it quite swiftly and in public when unsolicited feedback or solicited feedback with a rough edge comes my way. I recommend practicing because at first, there may be so much limbic response going on in you, especially when the feedback is delivered as an attack, that you might not have a whole lot of higher cortical functions like imagination in the moment until you get some practice. So maybe we'll have time. I would love to have time to practice this. You could lob some critiques at me and I could, in the moment, reframe them into coaching as gifts to my ongoing commitment to excellence. But in any case, you can do it on your own also or in small groups. I think it's very fun. How are we doing? Because there's more. Okay. So, meanwhile, about those limbic responses now. Obviously, critical feedback letting us know that we are considered in some way subpar is the most challenging and most high stakes. Why is that? Well, tiptoeing out on a ledge here, one reason is that it might rattle our cage. The cage we didn't know we were still in. I mean, the cage of our humanity, our threat responses, dare I say, ego, and most importantly, our sense of shame. Said that word. Notice your own body in the presence of that word. I would love to do a whole presentation on spiritual shame and shaming, including self-shaming. Hint. It's a huge and largely hidden subject, and I mean even from ourselves. I credit Rupi, Right Use of Power Institute, a class with them, for revealing to me that I have an active, triggerable sense of shame that I had no idea about. I thought I was over that. I thought I was free. I thought, I don't get embarrassed or ashamed. I just work with the reality in a compassionate way. Right? The problem is that for most people, shame is such an unpleasant emotion that we often disguise it even from ourselves. I'm going to go for another slide here. Figuring out how to do that. Note your body. Note your body with this conversation here. Is that visible in a good way? Yeah. Some common shame responses. Recognizing the shame. Perhaps, and this is just some, perhaps avoiding eye contact or aggressive eye contact, hot flush, collapse or tightness and compression in our body, unnecessary intensity, avoiding feeling, becoming logical, self-hatred as an implosion or rage as an explosion, shifting the focus, redirecting the conversation, pointing the finger of blame at others. I advise, get to know your shame patterns. We all have them. We may just not recognize them yet. Taking down the share so I can get back to seeing you guys. Yeah. Practicing our shame response, practicing recognizing our shame response, rather, and learning to move from shame to accountability is an ethical responsibility for everyone, but especially for us as leaders. Shame in the moment robs us of the ability to have accurate self-assessment. It is impossible to be a good listener and to be fully accountable when in a shame response. Very much in shame response that we don't even know we're having. I could say much about that, but for now I will say, as far as the remediation, keep tracking yourself right now and keep making openings and invitations for this part of you to be able to speak honestly. For me, it wasn't until after I learned how to recognize my own hidden shame responses that I could see how many other people were also feeling triggered by shame, hidden shame, especially when receiving critical feedback. Now that's when the compassion really begins. The process of remediating rather than spiritually bypassing hidden shame is a rich topic. For now, I'm going to lump it in with all the other aspects of internal care that are a must for responding to solicited or especially unsolicited feedback. Keep staying with yourself and your own body, because step one is having enough intimacy with ourselves, with our own humanity, to be aware that our heart may be thumping. Our breathing may have gotten shallow. Our blood pressure and cortisol levels may be up, or even our adrenaline. Some people's limbic response, however, and I have noticed that this is especially common for spiritual teachers, is to go into what Dr. Janice Hudlock calls a functional freeze state. I had to recognize this in myself, that the utterly unearthly calm that would come over me in a confrontation with unsolicited feedback was not a higher spiritual state. It was a complete disconnect from my emotions because they were inconvenient. From that unattached state, I could kick your ass down the stairs with just a few good spiritual lines. And that was a very highly effective spiritual martial arts move. Apologies to anyone to whom I have ever done that. Hopefully not recently. So I want to bring our attention to our own self-regulation strategies without which there is no insightfulness. What are your self-regulation rather than self-numbing or self-dissociating strategies? Here again, we could spend a lot of time in breakout rooms just riling each other up and then road testing and discussing our internal de-escalation strategies. I recommend it. I'd love to be part of that. I would like to, however, because there's more, not a lot more, but there is more. I would like to talk about a few of the external strategies for working with unsolicited feedback that I'd love to put on the map. And let me see if I can find again how to do this here. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I found it again. Is that easily visible? Great, wonderful. Some helpful external strategies. Stewarding the context, if not now, when? Or contextualization. Given the previous question of what do I need to say or do in order to get myself into a place where I can receive this feedback with both spiritual and psychological insight? Can I do that right now on the spot? Or do I need to say something like, I care very much about what you are bringing to my attention, and this is a very difficult moment for me to address it. Your concern deserves more time and space than I can give it right now. Can we arrange to meet soon? I think that's quite valid and can lead to a much better outcome. It's honest, it's simple, it can even be graceful. Yeah. 2, what do I need to say or do in order to support, meet, and help? Well, first, thou shalt not escalate. Let me I have another, I don't know how to do, can you change a screen share without popping out? Probably not, or at least I haven't the skill. So let me just go here to the thou shalt not de-escalate. Uh, thou shalt not escalate in response to critique. It's probably more important what we don't do in some ways than what we do. So, some thoughts you can add to this list. In response to critique, do not intellectualize, justify, shift the blame, defend, spiritualize, act superior, or discuss our intention. Let's look at that last one on the list for another few moments, because it may be surprising and seem counterintuitive, but it's a very important matter of timing. There may be a moment when it will be mutually satisfying for you to share with the student what your intentions were. But right off the bat, when both of you may be in a state of limbic activation, this is not the time. Why? Number one, it's likely to come off sounding like a defensive redirect away from the point that the student is trying to make, which involves your impact no matter how praiseworthy and golden your intention was. And two, right now the student needs your empathetic listening so that they know that they will be taken seriously, which will allow them to calm down into a more flexible and insight-prone state. There isn't a lot more, but I just want to breathe for a moment because this is so much. I'm going to wiggle a little bit too. I recommend it. The metabolic wiggle. Let your subconscious know you'll have all the time you need to integrate this. You don't have to eat it. You can just breathe it. Yeah. Whew. Alhamdulillah. I want to, for that second one or third, the one on the list, third on the list, thou shalt de-escalate, where I wrote full exhale. I want to highly recommend a book called Just Listen by Mark Goulson. This is a book that I affectionately believe could be entitled How to Stop Being a Total Asshole Without Ever Having to Realize That You Were One in the First Place. Goulson's book is full of so many excellent and insight-provoking strategies. But the one I want to highlight here is the importance of allowing and even encouraging someone else to exhale fully. I mean, emotionally exhale fully so that they can return to emptiness. Tell me more. And what's the worst part of it for you? And now that you've put this on the table, double check. Is there more? Are excellent ways of supporting the student's full exhale without scolding, without defensiveness, without fixing, just containing and assessing for the threads of truth and treasure that you will later be reframing into coaching gifts. Yeah.
Thea, if it's a good time to take a question, there's
Sure.
a hand up from Dave.
All right.
Yeah.
Here's Dave.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention on the do nots in regard to the critique. Could you touch briefly on the top one, which was intellectualize? Because I probably find that I did that a lot and would naturally fall towards that one. So it was such an important one on the list to me. If you could just touch briefly on that, I'd appreciate it.
Certainly, and thank you for asking. I know my students compare me sometimes to a dump truck full of compost that just keeps unloading. So I really appreciate the breather moments. Yeah, I think the intellectualized part calls us back to the observations and the research about the differences that accrue in a power differential as far as access to different parts of our brain. And that when we are in that up power position, we are much more likely to go into rational thought at the expense of empathy, which is such a marvelous way to put ourselves in a place where we could easily actually miss the point without even realizing it. Very often, when somebody is coming to us in that limbic state with a concern or an issue, they may not be at their most eloquent. And so our listening really does need to be empathetic rather than responding intellectually to the words in order to actually come to the gist of what people are bringing to us. For the satisfaction of feeling met, being intellectual, it doesn't bode well for the embrace and the contact. How's that?
Oh, I was so guilty.
Me too, because I'm smart and I can wield it like a weapon. All right. There are many repentance practices, I'm sure, in all of our traditions. Oh, a lot of hands. Yeah,
DK was next to raise her hand.
sure.
Hi. I wanted to just talk about something that happened for me just a few days ago, and I was holding a circle with a contemplative enneagram, and during the opening, during the opening of the circle, people are invited to come as they are. And I really got some come as you are. Like people really were there. And I'm not sure. I wanted to say, hold on, not quite that much, but of course I didn't. But someone made a comment about not wanting to be there. And I took it really personally, and I knew I was activated. And then someone else in the circle said some things, and I was also very activated. And so I totally lost my flow state. And typically when I facilitate, I am in a flow state, and I lost it for the whole circle. And now I focused on my breathing. I focused on having soft eyes. I focused at looking at them because I didn't want to look at them. So I was going through a shame response, I think. It was rough. And I took a break during the circle, and I said, let's have a 10-minute break. We're like, you can go and have a meditation walk. And so I went out and walked and breathed and let myself have my feelings and did a welcoming practice. But wow, it was rough is all I can say. And yeah, yucky. It wasn't fun.
Thank you for bringing it to community. If we can't talk about it here, where can we talk about it? That is so much why I am excited about these kinds of gatherings, and to be able to start talking about what can we do? What have we done that didn't work, so that we can be like, yep, that didn't work. And what can we do that did work? I can say for myself, what I have done sometimes that has worked is to include the whole class in my recovery process. Like to actually say, I've lost my alignment right now. Would you join me in doing some regrounding? Would you join me in doing some breathing? I even mentioned, like, whatever the practices are, I may even say, take a good look at this. Because when I'm like this, I'm not the teacher. I'm a human. Don't take anything I say when I'm like this all that seriously. Instead, please invite me, if I haven't already invited you, to just start coming back to our alignment together. Sometimes at that point I have burst into tears, but that has not actually been a problem. And then as I come back into myself with the students, there usually comes a moment when I say, oh, look at that, look at that. I think the teacher is in again. What do you think? What are you noticing? And it actually, I find, creates a greater safety for the students in themselves to surrender to what's coming through me rather than to my, rather fallible humanity. So that's just a thought.
Mm,
And so much
thank
more
you.
to share on that. Yeah.
It is just so good to have a safe place to talk about this.
Right?
And to talk about my humanity and the fact that I get activated and that I'm just human. And when I just totally lost the flow. Anyway,
Thank you, ASI. Thank you so much. You rock.
Hey,
Shall we?
is it okay to let other speakers come on, or do you want to go back to your curriculum? There's 3 hands up.
I have 3 small things that would finish the presentation. I would ask the people with their hands up how they feel about it. Like give a wave or something. Like, okay. So I will mention the last 3 things on my list that were on that first list of external considerations.
Great, thanks. We'll get back to the speakers.
One was, before reckoning, i.e., figuring out how to frame this as a gift to our ongoing commitment to excellence, what can we affirm? What can we appreciate in the students' delivery? Their courage, perhaps, in approaching us, their integrity, their trust and belief that we can work together to improve our relationship or the situation. Anything that is obviously true or insightful about what they're saying and how it might lead to benefit, very good to mention it, to appreciate. 5, what does this student love and respect about me? And or hope for in being my student? Presence that. I mention this because I think sometimes when we're in the middle of one of these difficult feedback conversations, we have a kind of identity crisis. Wait, I'm the beneficent teacher. Who am I now? It's like we're out of role, or a role is, we kind of don't remember how to be. How do I act? What do I do? Take a good wild flying guess. What does the student love and respect about you? Live it. What do they hope for from you? Presence it. It kind of simplifies all that existential crisis down into something, doable, at least by approximation. Even the approximation is great. And the last one that I want to mention is, don't even think of offering coaching to the other person until they are done offering their coaching to you. Possibly when they are done offering all of their coaching, what I've noticed is that often the person will start coaching themselves. They'll start saying, well, and here's what I could do, and here's what I could have done better, and here's what I think I brought to the situation. They'll do it spontaneously when when you've taken all that they can give, really taken it, and even asked, is there more? This has been so helpful. If they don't spontaneously go into self-coaching, you might, because you might not, you might ask if they are open to hearing a thought from you. If they say yes, don't unload the waterfall. Offer them something small and see how they do with it. If the answer is they don't gobble it up like a whole school of piranhas, so like if they don't come to it like little fishies, wait until later. You can always later say, I've been thinking about it, and see how it goes then. All right. That is what I had to say. Let's go back to comments, sharing, collective wisdom.
And be sure, folks, to use the chat also. Jeff, your hand was next. Thanks for your patience.
Oh, if you use the chat, I will not see it. Just
I'll pick it up from the chat. Yeah. Thanks.
First, I have to remind me, is it Thea or Tia?
I actually like variety.
Then be careful with me. I'm going to call you Bud.
All right. As long as you look me in the eye and I know that's
okay. No, I'll go with Tia. I like Tia. Tia, this is awesome.
Mashallah.
So I come at this as a 40-year spiritual student and a 30-year mediator. And it's clear to me that you are a mediator. Some of the things that jumped out at me is, I love that you kept saying, tell me more. That to me is so powerful. I want to add one that I have found powerful for your reaction and just What does that mean? And that's what Dave did. He said, what does intellectualized mean? And what comes to me, you've given me lots of new thoughts, like asking questions of the people who come with feedback is both a gift to yourself and to that person. And they get to hear themselves. And then they realize, gee, maybe that's not even right. And so I just see it as it's such a gift to ask them. Keep saying, tell me more. What does that mean? And I also love that you said later, because what comes to me is, I also learned this years ago, let the silence become awkward sometimes. I think we rush to jump in, and sometimes letting it sit, that person may come up with even more that they share with us. And you made me realize, this is a new one for me, to maybe ask them then to just go with silence and just be, what would you like me to do next? Because they may not even know. And to me, it's like, I think in situations I would say, how do you feel? Can I reflect on this? I don't even, I'm not ready. I don't want to say anything. Like I need time. I wouldn't say I need to deactivate, but I need to absorb all of this. Anything I say is going to be wrong. So I just throw those out there. And I say that as one who I know I can become dysregulated and activated. And so anyway, and lastly, I've become a student of memory. And I think we have to remember that human memory is so fallible and nobody remembers what actually happened accurately. There's a lot more that I could say about that, but to me, that's really, really important. So thank you. And I will now go into my awkward silence.
Thank you. Not awkward at all. Blessed. Thank you for all those different layers of wisdom there. Yeah. And I have to say, especially, I am loving that feeling that Jack spoke of in the beginning, the difference between speaking from our spiritual tradition rather than just about it. I am really hearing that in all of you. I treasure this. Thank you. Rosie, would you like to speak?
Assalamu alaikum. I don't know if you
Oh, alaikum
remember me.
assalam.
Yeah, we were with the city together in Hollywood, Florida.
Oh
Hope you're
my gosh,
well.
Muniba?
Yes, Muniba.
Holy
Sorry, I should have
moly,
said
it's
Muni.
Muniba.
Yes, how are you,
Life is
beloved?
good. Life is good.
Yeah, so good to hear you. You have spiritual kung fu. I love it. And hello to you, Jack. I love you, Jack. Okay, so I'm not a teacher, but I'm going to speak from the perspective of the student. And I don't know, I'm sure you're aware, but what you're experiencing as teacher student is happening amongst students. And this is my main subject that I bring up: unsolicited opinions and advice. I
Ah,
do
I see.
not appreciate it. And so I've had to mention it. And it was an experiment I did once, but I was just so fed up because after Sufi school, everybody came up and telling me what Allah said that they should tell me and all that.
Oh,
And the conversations became ridiculous because everybody was quoting Sidi, not of to anyone's fault. They were doing. Some people are sincere, but and I say it in all the best way, teacher wannabes, and they want to impress you as the teacher. And that may be mommy daddy issues. I really don't know. I don't care. I'm there to awaken, to increase my level, to go deep. And after CD, I chose people in particular. I went to Jack because of her directness and her honesty. And that was a choice I made consciously. Now, when I share, I have said things in all of the retreats and whatever, and people come afterwards and tell me. And I have said in group, I can't share from the heart or go deeply And I'm there mostly for the teacher, even though I know that the group dynamic is important. I can't share openly and go deep and interact with the teacher if I have to watch what I'm going to say, because someone else is going to come up and try and fix me. And so I am not in the position that you are all in, and I am very grateful that you are all making all effort as teachers, because everybody that you are teaching has taken so many courses that I don't know, you know, it kind of, I don't want to be fixed. And I'm grateful, Thea, you spoke very well.
Mashallah. It's
Many
so good to
blessings
see
to
you.
you.
Thank
Great.
you.
to meet you.
You open up a territory that's a very valuable territory. If you want to contact me, I did a version of this presentation from the student's perspective, including a
Oh,
lot of what I call Sufi one-liners.
okay, got it.
Comes at you with this, you can come back with that.
Yeah.
So contact me. We can talk about that if you want it.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Great
Take
area
care
to
now.
yeah.
Thank you, Rosie. Good to see you again. Tom.
Yes.
I have, I guess, a comment, perhaps in part a question. It seems to me that a good deal of problems originate when there's a transactional basis to the offerings that are made, and I'm not sure how to work with that. If there's a transaction in which a teacher is suggesting that I really have something to offer you to make you a better person, we're already heading in a direction where it's encouraging a power imbalance rather than de-escalating that power imbalance. And I honestly have no idea what to do with that. The second question that I have is, my experience has been that, I have done, continue to be reminded of my jujitsu moves to avoid taking my responsibility. And in the times when I've done all those things that you suggested, I have equally as often found people being really enraged, more enraged at me because I haven't met their limbic response with my limbic response, as if they're so used to interacting with them. If they're so used to their interactions being on that plane, now I've further upset the apple cart for them. And I'm curious what you might suggest to do in that situation. Thank you.
Wow, both of those were incredibly rich. And I find myself mostly sitting here thinking, I don't want to be the only one responding to that question. There's probably a great deal of collective wisdom on that. I'll give you my take and then leave it to Jack to decide, do we get the core, like, how do we go from here, especially with other questions as well? I think I'm going to take the second one first and begin with the humility of saying, I don't know what's going on in those situations since I wasn't there. So I may be missing the flavor of it. So when I say may be useless, what I do know is that if the student is in an emotional limbic space and I am not making emotional contact of some kind, if they can't feel the warmth of my blood, it doesn't have to be blood heat. It doesn't have to be passion, but detachment won't cut it, that's for sure. Calm and detached will not cut it. There needs to be some kind of feeling of a warm human blood, my humanity, not just my exalted whatever it is that they figure I have, and on a good day I might have. They need to feel that I'm with you on that human level. It does not need to be where we are based, but we do need to have it as almost like an adapter plug. This is my humanity, shaking hands with your humanity. That is a thought that may be of use or not, depending. It seems worth giving a try. How's that sitting before I go to the next one, which was really the first one? Okay. The first was about receiving unwanted coaching from a teacher. A huge domain, the domain of discussing power imbalance from the student's point of view, and so not able to be as fully explored in this situation. And also the question of de-escalating a power imbalance. I'm a Rupi diehard, Right Use of Power Institute diehard. Don't see a power imbalance as a negative thing. I think that it's a recognition of people's capacities that can be put in service, cleanly or uncleanly. So I, at least, am not looking to do away with the power imbalance. I'm wanting to look it in the eye and say, are we doing this well? And that question of what kind of coaching we are asking for from a teacher, and what kind of a coaching a teacher may feel that they need to give us in order to be able to have us be congruent with the kind of community that they're setting up. Like in a certain community, certain situations, if you want to be my student, there's some things that are not okay in my classroom or in my circles. I do need to be able to coach you in certain ways. How do we negotiate that? I'm going to name that yet another very worthwhile subject that may be too large for here and now. How's that? Okay. Jack, what do we do? What is customary and good? As far as questions that there's no way I've got the only answer to this.
And there's no way I have either. And I'd prefer to kind of, let you be the expert here, because you're swimming in these things. From my own personal experience, though, sometimes a student doesn't want to see your humanness, because really they're looking for a parent, and they're not, they're just looking for a parent, and so your humanness is not welcome. I've seen that. And the student has left. Invariably, the student has left. And it's like, that's fine. I just hope they don't go to another teacher who's maybe disconnected a little bit from their humanness, but they usually do. They usually do. And the second thing, I suppose, is the role of a spiritual teacher. I found that really useful. Is like, look, in my role as a spiritual teacher, this is my response. In my role as Jack the woman, this is what I do. And I think that framing is very useful for students to see, oh, okay, oh, it's a role. It's a role. Okay, so this is how it works there. And it just gives clarity around what part I'm addressing, where I'm coming from in that moment, and being able to navigate between the two clearly. I think if we're clear about where we're coming from in that moment, it gives a greater direction, I think, for the student, And keep in mind, we are working with a culture that has largely abused status power for thousands of years. thousands of years, it's been the norm to deify a spiritual teacher and have no space for their humanness because they've transcended it. It's like, oh my God. So we're coming up against this whole few thousand years of misinterpreting what it is to be a spiritual teacher. So I like to leave space for that too. You know, like what's the culture? What's the cultural conditioning here? What's the collective understanding of this? And that's the thing about the ASI. We're trying to break the paradigm of spiritual leadership, and we're misunderstood all the time. It's like, all right, so I got to get used to, not being understood. That's part of my work, is like, be okay about being not understood. Be okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's what I'm here for. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you all. Will we go to Virginie?
Sure.
Thank you for this super inspirational talk. Um,
Are you the
I
one who
think
knows my brother?
yes, I do. Yeah, he lives a few blocks away. Literally,
My God.
I just recognized you.
I don't
Actually,
think he knows I do this kind of thing.
I don't think so, because I asked him many years ago exactly what you were doing, and he was unable to answer. I was like, "This is weird. I don't think it's what she does. I don't think it's what is written here." But yeah, I don't think it's clear for him. But that's another topic. Sorry, but I gladly connect. Yeah, I think I'm gonna send him a text afterwards. Say, hey.
I'm on the verge of saying, "Don't tell."
Okay, sure, I get
Follow
it.
your heart. Do what you like. Out.
Thank you, thank you. I think right now, since I want to more ask a question from the position of my own teacher than me being teaching, knowing that being in the intersection will also help me in both ways. But I'm in the position where I have a teacher right now who really wants the feedback and really the need of the feedback for his own correction. But when I try to bring the feedback, or other students try to bring it, we get a lot of reaction from the list that you had, pretty much quite many of them. And it's at the point where I'm not sure how to approach the problem and how to bring a feedback that he so deeply wants and is in need of, as he says himself, not that I say. But it seems to activate something so strongly in him that it is difficult to bring, or has become nearly impossible. So what would be the best or a potential course of action that could be tried out here to facilitate the situation?
Wow, in 25 words or less. It's a huge, just acknowledging first, it's a huge conversation. Again, I'm not positive whether, where did you go? You're gone. There you are. Okay. Again, I'm not positive in terms of being respectful to the container here, how much to go down that direction. Rupi has a really lovely 7-step process for down to up power feedback that I enjoy very much. I went over a whole thing about this for my spiritual community where, yeah, there's some significant up power fragility in some of the teachers, and there are recordings of those lectures that also may be useful because we took it, Rupi, for now, until there's more at Rupi, and I'm working on it, there's not as much that's both from a spiritual context and in a down to up context. Shadhuliyya Sufi communities has a bunch of recordings of me teaching with my partner Mahaba about power dynamics in spiritual communities from the down power position. It's not one size fits all, it's very Islamic, but it might be useful. And Rupi has a lot about down power to up power feedback. it's problem with having too much to say on a subject is I may not be saying hardly anything at all.
Give me some sources to dig into at least.
Yeah. And
Thank you.
ask off for my email address. And we'll
I will.
is
Thank you.
that good enough for now?
I understand the complexity of an answer, and I see that there is more to look at, and that there is several sources that can be explored. So that give me already a piece of answer or something that I can forward, even as material. If it's not me who would handle everything. So, but thank you. That does help. That's why I'm gonna take your email so I have the exact name or where to search and what to search or links.
Anybody who wants to contact me, it's fine. Jack, you can put my email in the chat if you like. Yeah. Aaron, your
Thanks.
face has been amazing, okay? It's been great having you here.
Ooh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's been so good to be here. And as my face shows, I feel incredibly resonant with the material, and it feels like a breath of fresh air to hear you talking about these things, particularly in the context of spiritual teachers, students, spiritual community, etc. Um, so thank you so much. There's so much that I want to say and bring, so I'm just going to kind of stream of consciousness here a little bit and be reasonable. And I think part of what I'd like to bring, first of all, is like, man, yeah, like me too. I've done everything on that list with people in my life. I'm not technically a spiritual teacher. I am a mental health professional. So I do navigate power dynamics, and I have been a spiritual student for some time, and have recently gone through a year of a lot of situations of attempting to provide feedback quite imperfectly, from the down power position to the up power position, and getting a lot of responses where my teachers were or the organizations even were various degrees of human. And that led me to leave everything that I was doing. The teachers, the communities. Um, it was just time for me to do that. And um, what the few things that I think are in me to say is one of them is like, it's been really great to let my teachers off the hook a bit as I've been processing myself. In regards to, I knew these people were human, but they really showed me just how human they are, kind of where they are in their own process. And that's okay. That's okay for them to be there. And it's okay for me to be where I am too. I think that maybe some of the heartbreak for me, because I think it was actually appropriate for me to leave at this time. And there's a teaching there about like something to do with when it's time to cleave. And when I don't know, when larger forces are at play, when you're not supposed to meet one another, you're supposed to come apart. Things are supposed to come undone, and maybe it's supposed to be a little messy. But I'm not here to get too much into that. There is a grief for me of not being able to, even if it were time to cleave, end in ways that I felt honored the fullness of the relationship and what I received and how I showed up. One of them was 7.5 years. It was a long time. It was a long time. My teacher has seen me through a lot of growth. I've seen them through a lot of growth. I've been with the community as it's blossomed. And I think what you're talking about here provides an opportunity, even in the cleaving moment, that we might be able to do that a little more consciously together. Um, and leave in such a way that maybe not everything is tied up, but at least we can meet heart to heart in the work that we've done and see each other as we then turn to go. So that was one of the things that I want to say, and then just um, two others. One of them is a point, another is an emotion. I also find that as I deepen into these things myself, as I absolutely have a desire to be a teacher and generate a community, uh, uh, and I think a lot about the things we're talking about here, and something that hits me a lot these days is that it takes time to slow down.
Yeah.
It takes time to slow down and do the work that we're talking about doing. And it often feels to me that it needs to be unpaid work. I don't want to be coming and paying for a session with a teacher to give them feedback and for us to then slow down and process through it. There needs to be unpaid room. But like, where does that actually happen? I don't quite know. And I don't have the answer to that. Because, for instance, when I think about the teacher that I was with for 7.5 years, they're working like mad. They have a full life. They have a spouse. They have a child. I get that. And it's like, wow, yeah, you're already stacked. You're already stacked. And we would have to work through a lot to even get to a place where we can kind of start to do this in a generative way together, structures in the community and things like this. And so I just want to own that. I think back to tribal contexts and just go like, and I promise I'll be done here soon. I appreciate that I've been talking at length. People had survival bonds. And so when it came time to navigate conflict, there was a lot of incentive to need to internalize things and find ways through as opposed to just fracturing. And of course, I see this not just in spiritual communities, but in our culture at large, as I think about what it really takes to do this well together. So that was just one thing. And the other, I just want to say in community that I'm grieving. But I'm just grieving. I'm grieving the loss of my teachers. I'm grieving the loss of community. It's appropriate for me to be where I am right now. And I just feel that loss and the complication and complexity of it. And so I just want to say that in community and just let it be presenced in this beautiful resonance container. And thank you so much, everybody, for your shares and ASI for facilitating this work. And again, Thea, for your incredible presentation.
Mashallah. Thank you so much. This is us. This is what we're for. I mean, what do you think happens now? Without any more hands up? Do we do playing games in breakout rooms? Do we take them? You know what I think I would love to do? Could we take another minute of silence? Bismillah. A minute is such a short time, and a minute is eternity. We have 7 minutes. Oh, and another hand raised. Perhaps that's where we go. Hey, Jeff Flower.
Oh my God, you just made my day. My last name actually means flower stone in German. So here's a huge one to put on you. Aaron got me thinking about this. I love what Aaron brought up. The tribal, our evolutionary biology. We are wired from most of our history to live in small bands of humans where we could not go away from each other. To leave the band meant to die. We now live online. We live in ways that we can leave communities, we can cast people out, and everybody can find another place to go to. And I think so I say this partly for us to be compassionate towards ourselves, that we don't, it's easy to run away instead of be forced to give feedback, accept feedback, because we have no choice but to do that. And so I think that we are in a new era very early on, and we have to face this. How do we work as humans wired a certain way in an online world? And I'll just throw AI into this, where things are changing so rapidly. And I don't know how many people on this call do their spiritual teaching online as opposed to in person, but I suspect it's a lot of it is. And so I throw that out as this huge topic to you to put in your lap with just a few minutes left. I'm curious if you've had any experience or perspectives on that.
There's certainly, to my heart, a quality of mixed blessing in the ability to drift and leave. What came to mind immediately was all of the women throughout history who didn't leave their marriage because there was no other viable way of life. And how wonderful it is in that sense for there to be the possibility of lots of more marriages breaking up. Right? Like sometimes it's really, really good for leaving to be a viable option. It cuts down on a certain kind of abusive bullshit. And at the same time as mourning the kind of spiritual and psychological laziness that can set in that sense of disposability, I also have to celebrate that capacity to choose. I think that's a marvelous thing. I'm not sure if I have something else to say on it. Perhaps others do. My heart is mostly feeling very full with the fullness of emptiness, if you know what I mean. And probably this is the group where you would know what I mean. It's a very satisfying feeling inside of my chest right now. Jack, what do you say about these last 3 minutes? Do you have marvelous announcements to make?
The reality of bringing in a transaction is making me a little bit uncomfortable because I'm not good at this part, but I am going to put the donate button into the chat and ask, please contribute so that we can keep the doors open and keep offering this type of work. Please contribute. If it meant something to you, if you received something, we would ask you to contribute. What you spoke to was just so rich, and there could be 5 different follow-up webinars that we could do. There's so much to explore. And it excites me. These topics really excite me because this is why the ASI was set up. It was to give spiritual leaders a community, a safe place for us to be together and talk about what it is like, rather than the image of what it was supposed to be, the performative aspect of spiritual leadership. We know it's inauthentic. So honoring ourselves, honoring our humanness, and being professional, and being holistic, and introducing self-care and honesty and growth in our humanness, even if we've gone beyond the beyond internally. The growth and the human in our humanness continues always, as long as you're in a human form. And I would love if that was just normalized. And it's these types of conversations that help it to be normalized. And it's up to us to tell our students that it's normal that there is a human being here who will continue to grow. It's healthy, not unhealthy. It's healthy that I'm growing and learning, and that I'm part of the ecosystem. I'm part of Mother Earth, which will constantly change. You know? DK, do you want to?
In some Buddhist teachings, one of my Buddhist teachers said one way you could talk about feedback is say, I would like feedback. Could you give me one thing that you liked about what I've done and one thing that you would do differently? And then, yeah. And so that's what I say to folks in my circles.
Mashallah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Hey, y'all, donate to ASI. It's real cool.
A gazillion thank yous, Thea.
So glad.
Yeah, it was just such a gift for all of us. Thank you, and may you continue to offer these blessings and be enriched for what you offer. Thank you, everybody, for coming today.
So much.
Yeah. And we'll catch you all downriver.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.